Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build. Today we are going to be building Eve's home for the Disney save, and that is obviously Eve from WALL-E, especially because we are in basically the same area that I've been building in up until this point, Port Promise, and this is the old mill lot, which is like the one lot over in the corner by itself that I was really excited to do something a little bit special for. So yeah, we're going to be building Eve's home today. I did in a previous build create a home for WALL-E, so if you'd like to see that, of course it's linked in the playlist, and the playlist is always linked in the box down below, the description box down below. So this build is completely opposite of WALL-E's in every single way, basically. Like I've said previously that WALL-E and Eve are aesthetically very different from one another. I definitely wanted their two homes to represent that idea as well. So I am calling today's build the Axiom. And before anybody yells at me and lets me know that this isn't the Axiom ship, I'm fully aware of that. However, this is the ship that Eve lands on Earth in, and the one that she goes back to the Axiom ship from. And so I felt like in order to carry the name over, and seeing that we probably were not going to do a full recreation of the actual Axiom ship in the Disney save, and it especially doesn't really fit in with the lore considering that I've done the Lido deck, and if I was to do anything else in the future, I don't even know where I'd put it, to be completely honest with you guys. It's a huge, huge building. So we're going to just be creating like a little chunk of it today. And in order to carry over one of the WALL-E themed ideas, we're just going to call it the Axiom for familiarity's sake. This ship is actually shown very briefly in the movie, and I do suggest you maybe go and look up a photo or two of it really quickly before you watch, or just go look up one right now, like in the middle of watching, because I definitely was using the ship as reference, and I want to obviously point out that there are certain things that I wasn't able to replicate and certain shapes that I don't think would have been super possible while keeping it super functional, but I wanted to generally have that same like spaceship aesthetic. So Eve's video, her creative sim, is going to be next, and I am going to spoil it just for the sake of talking about her a little bit in this video, but she is going to be an alien. So she will be our first main alien of the save. I did create one other alien townie that I'm going to switch later on to a different occult, so he doesn't really count. She's our first official alien character, and one of the main playable sims that'll be an alien character. And obviously we will wait for her creative sim to talk a little bit more about her experience on Earth and all of that, but it makes a lot of sense that she would live in some kind of a spaceship that is stationed on Earth for a long period of time, and her original spaceship from the movie at that. So we're going to have a really futuristic looking build today. This is definitely a little bit weird, crazy. It's something that I love to build, your like non-typical, non-traditional home. This is really up my alley. I absolutely love it. It doesn't come as naturally to me to do a build like this for the interior, just because of the simplicity again. And I talked about that a lot in my Eve's Terrarium restaurant build. The simplicity of that build kind of is a struggle to me, and I couldn't even really tell you why, but I was having fun with the exterior of this because it is a little bit more cluttered and mechanical and more of that like puzzle piecing process that I experience with doing like WALL-E's transport vehicle. And then you go to the interior and it has to have this very futuristic, clean lines, sort of minimal look, especially considering Eve and her character. She is just this like very minimal looking character, and so it doesn't make sense to like clutter up her space and make it all sorts of crazy, kind of how WALL-E's space is. This is definitely like a more condensed version of it. So we have the exterior of the ship coming to play here. I have used a little bit of tool for this build, just for the 90-degree L brackets that are connecting the different rocket thrusters to the main part of the ship and giving it like a slight tilted angle. It's probably not even super noticeable to many of you, but I wanted that to be there because it was like a portion of the ship that I recognized from some of the reference photos. And then one thing that I did find a little bit annoying was that I just couldn't find too many references of the ship very close up so that I could maybe get some of those details on my version. And I had to use a couple of photos that were taken at quite a distance and looked to me like promotional photos maybe. One in particular that was like a landscape photo, and so it was really zoomed out and then you had the ship kind of off to the side, and it didn't allow me to really get the detail that I wanted. So a lot of the exterior decoration for this is basically just me making a lot of it up. There are some things here and there that make up like the main portion of the ship in shape and in color and in like structural design that I obviously wanted to keep the same. And I think if you took a photo of the original ship and you look at mine, the shape is what's going to be like the most familiar aspect of it. A lot of the other portions are basically just whatever I felt like might be appropriate. And for a build like this, I really like to use pieces that are very scientific-y and very like cluttery looking and mechanical. A lot of the get to work stuff, some Strangerville, a lot of eco lifestyle actually came in handy, and like the pipe items and stuff like that from City Living. So it's basically a huge accumulation of all of those types of things. Some of them going into the wall partially, and then some of them just as more like wall decor on the exterior, but hopefully not taking up too much of like the interior, because we do have like a very small structure inside, and I knew I had to get a fully functioning house in here, so we didn't want to clutter up so much of the exterior that I just didn't have any room to move around on the inside. Definitely a little bit of a balance here and there. And also the lighting is super important. I feel like even though it wasn't really shown at night, or if there were scenes of this ship at night, I don't remember them and I wasn't using them as reference. Obviously, a spaceship like this is going to have a lot of little lights around the outside of it. So I wanted to make sure that we had a lot of those more futuristic, like floor to ceiling bar lights all over, and then some extra stuff here and there, so it really glows and looks kind of cool at night. There is one main like strip that runs up the front of the ship, and in the photos it looked very much just like a part of the ship that is like something on the exterior, but for the sake of the Sims I did make it a window so that she could obviously have some natural light coming in, and I think that most people would want that. So at least the upper two floors do have windows. The bottom floor actually doesn't have any windows, but that ends up being more of like the bathroom office-y area, so that works. This build completely would have not been possible if not for the ladder update, so let's all just say a big thank you for once to The Sims for the ladders. I don't even know what I would have done. I would have done some horrible looking staircase around the outside that would have just made this look crazy, but instead I can do like a really simple ladder system that goes straight up the back and is kind of hidden behind the thrusters. It is on some kind of like a spaceship docker, so that we did have a little bit more room with the ladder system around the back of it. That's obviously not a part of the ship, but I feel like it's something that would be important for a spaceship that is not only landing, but like if you're gonna dock a spaceship for a long time, and I'm thinking of just in general like a rocket, this very much has like that basic rocket structure to it. You would probably want to have some kind of support or some kind of exterior system to climb up and down the different layers. So basically the ladders are on the exterior. That is also to keep the rooms fully closed. I did originally have the first ladder going straight up through the bottom of the floor and going into the main room, but the problem with doing that is that I either have to close that ladder off and make it like a little box, which cuts up the space even more, and it wasn't going to work for this build because we're already working on like very, very close quarters. But it also opens the room up to the exterior. So basically the game thinks that that room just became a part of the outside world, and it takes the outdoor lighting and it puts it in the room, and it doesn't look very good at all, and I'm not even sure how that would work with the weather system in the game. I hope that makes sense, but I essentially had to add some kind of a patio to the outside so that we could use the ladders without having any major restrictions as far as that stuff goes. And it does give us slightly more room, maybe like 2 or 3 more tiles, and I'm desperately going to need it, as you guys are going to see in a moment here. So I do imagine that this ship has been here for a while, and one thing that I like to mention with the Disney save is that most of the stories can take place at pretty much any point that you want them to. I have like a designated point that I think that they each fall into. Like if you join one story, it might already be in the middle of like its given movie, and then you might join another story and it hasn't even started yet. It is kind of really up to you however you want to play it. You can always move things around to get it to the position that you would like to go through the story as, or maybe you're just more interested in playing with the characters in general and you don't even really care about like recreating some of the classic Disney stories. However, I imagined that this ship has been here for a long time. Eve is now a more permanent resident of planet Earth, and so we have a little bit more vegetation growing around the ship. And this might not even be exactly where it landed originally, because if you remember in the movie, it sort of searches for a space to land and then it docks and then immediately leaves the Earth. And it looks like the ship is housing other Eve units that it presumably is taking to other areas of the planet to do the same function that Eve is doing. However, obviously for the Disney save, we're going to ignore a lot of that lore because it doesn't really make sense. So instead, this is the ship like more permanently docked. And I think that she would like to pick an area that is a little bit further away from the rest of the lots and a lot of the civilization of Evergreen Harbor, considering she is going to be an alien. I think that alien sims, for the most part, try to keep that generally a secret, and at least for like my headcanon lore in general, I like to believe that any occult sims, especially in like my save files and stuff, they don't make it known that they are like of that occult. So I believe that she would be kind of like an alien in secret, and so she wouldn't want her spaceship like docked in the middle of town. So this is the lot that's like over by itself. It really works. There are like more plants and greenery and trees over here. It is still in Port Promise, so it's very close to the rest of the Wally builds, and it's tucked in its own area that tends to look a little bit more green. And I have removed a lot of the original trash that would have been depicted in the original movie. She lands in like a trash pit. But for this, I think if she's been here for a while, she would probably have moved it and cleaned it up and planted more vegetation, especially with the job that we're going to give her, and I will talk about that more in her Creative Sim video. But obviously she's going to be more of like an eco-centric character, so she is definitely into plants, gardening, and helps with that for like the lore of Evergreen Harbor and all of that. For the interior, you guys are going to notice right away that I am struggling. I'm trying to figure out the layout. I am trying to figure out what we even really want to do in here. This is such an awkward shape, and one of my most difficult things I find personally in the game is trying to decorate a shape like this. It is so hard with everything sort of facing in like one big circle, and you really can't put stuff up against the walls the way that you could in more like of a regular residential with like very square and rectangular rooms. I find this shape in particular to be very hard to decorate and still make super functional. And then you got to think about like all of the things that you would really want to have, obviously. So I wanted her to have like an office and maybe a room that serves as more of like the main captain's deck and has a lot of computers and a lot of technology and things that are important for Evergreen Harbor and for her future job that I'm going to give her. So I really wanted basically an entire space to do that. And then we have the kitchen, living room, bathroom, bedroom. So we've just got a very, very limited little area here. And I also really wanted to do the pod bed. A lot of you had mentioned for my Buzz Lightyear bedroom renovation that I should have done the pod bed for Buzz. And I really was saving it for more of these like alien characters, especially Eve and her shape and her like literally looking like the pod bed. She literally like that's her shape. So it makes a lot of sense to give her something like that. But it takes up so many tiles. It's actually like a reskin of the floating casket from Vampires. So it takes up a huge amount of space. I don't even understand why it takes up that much space, but I knew I was going to use it. And so I basically had to dedicate one of the floors entirely to her bedroom. And in general, with decorating, especially considering this is a spaceship, I did think that if she's been here for a while, she might have gutted some of the original technology and cluttered up space of the spaceship and maybe gotten rid of some stuff that like she didn't think she was going to need anymore, especially if she doesn't ever plan on leaving again and this is more of like a permanent thing. If you really want to make it your own home, kind of how Wally did with his transport vehicle, you might get rid of some of the original like integrity of the spaceship and replace it for stuff that's a little bit more functional, but we still have to keep just a little bit of it and then decorate obviously with things that she would be really interested in. We have the bedroom on the very top floor, and it is very, very simple. We're using a lot of the same furniture that I actually used on my Eve's terrarium build. I basically knew I wanted to use white everywhere. Everything has to be white and clean cut, and very soft blues, a little bit of like that glowy blue color to represent her eyes, again with the same idea that I did in Eve's terrarium. And that means that we could use the cube item, and we also have the one mirror with like the light going all the way around it, I think from Get Famous. So those kinds of things. And then just some plants here and there. The very simple, more modern looking plants. I didn't want it to get too crazy. We're going to have builds in the future that I feel like I can really overdo it with like the interior plants. But for this, it just had to be super modern, if not like more so. So it has to kind of even look futuristic. And in my mind, futuristic is super, super streamlined and like no clutter. Very basic on like the wall decor, on the seating, repeated furniture. And then obviously thinking about Eve's shape in general, I tried to pick like a lot of round furniture. So even in the beginning, I was using the Moschino stuff chairs, I believe those are. And I ended up trading them out for those like pod circular chairs. Again, because we can use the Moschino stuff for like a futuristic like build later on for a different character. And I think even if I was to take this spaceship and redo it for Buzz, it would look completely different, because I do think of Buzz and the type of spaceship that he would be flying or that he would be equipped with would look different than Eve. Eve, I think of Wally, and I think of like her shape and her design and the technology that they show in that movie. So I do try to like think of all of that kind of stuff. I'm trying not to also repeat any ideas. So even if later on, which off the top of my head, I cannot come up with another character that I would build a spaceship for. But if we did, let's say, I would obviously want the interior to look very different. And if we do a futuristic build later on, I would want it to look very, very different. So I try to keep those kinds of things in mind, definitely when I'm building. The second floor ended up being almost all living room and kitchen, a very spread out kitchen, super, super basic. And then the bottom floor is going to be our bathroom / office. And I know that's a weird combination, and I know some people aren't going to like that. And I was even trying in the beginning to section off the bathroom area. But again, I feel like this would be a home very much for Eve. Like, you're not going to get a lot of people coming over here. If Eve's an alien and this is her spaceship, she probably doesn't have company over very often. And I think if this was like your solo man spaceship, you might have more close quarters, interesting things like that, where the bathroom is more exposed in the office, especially if there's no windows or anything. You're not really having too much contact with the outside world. You're not worried about like having your own closed off bathroom. And to be honest, it probably wouldn't have functioned and it wouldn't have looked very good. So it is kind of in the same room and the same space as the office. I also thought it was funny that it's like she's kind of like a workaholic and she's really into her work and so dedicated that she had to have the bathroom right next to her office, because that's all she does is like work and innovate and go to the bathroom and then continue. And I just thought that might be like a funny little thing. Definitely using a lot of the more futuristic stuff, especially for like the bathroom stuff and basically anything else. I didn't want to use anything in here that didn't look like it was next level futuristic. Obviously, within the parameters of The Sims, we do have a couple of things here and there that wouldn't look super futuristic because we just don't have anything. Like maybe even a dresser would have been nice, like a futuristic type of dresser, but we will see. And that's actually going to be the end of today's speed build. I hope you guys really like it. It will be on the gallery soon. I'm sorry. I will update as soon as possible. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the link at the end of the video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.